All right, taking a bit of a break from all the RBA chat. It's time to talk property for our fortnightly property segment. But this is actually going to be the last time we do this with Emma Duffy, who I'm pleased to say joins us now. Emma Duffy, of course, the editor of Your Investment Property magazine, just for a couple more weeks before you shoot through to London. Thanks for joining us on the Savings Tip Chat for one final time.
Hey guys, good to be here, and it's kind of bittersweet that it's my last time.
Yeah, you've been an immense member of the team, obviously, and also a great addition to this podcast. Always with a very interesting segment because property, is a major part of the Australian financial landscape. So this topic in particular interests me. But what also interests me is your savings tip for this week. So what's your savings tip?
Yeah, well, I recently bought a new laptop, and Apple have got this promotion going at the moment where if you buy a new Mac, they'll chuck in a pair of AirPods for free, but the promotion's only for students and teachers. So when I went to check out, I was expecting them to ask me for ID or something just to verify that I actually am a student or a teacher, but they didn't. They never asked me for any form of ID or any sort of verification that I was actually eligible for that promotion. So I checked out. There was no issues, no dramas. They shipped it, and yeah, I didn't pay for them at all. So that's on you, Apple. I really hope no one from Apple's listening to this.
Oh,
But
I'm,
yeah,
I'm sure
if
they can
you're
find
in,
in their heart a
yeah,
multi-trillion-dollar company
Mm-hmm.
losing
exactly.
Australian
It's
dollars.
Surely.
$300.
Yeah. Oh, nice one. Good tip, Em. And yeah, your final one ever. So we're gonna miss you. Although we've only just started hearing your savings tips since we just started doing it this year. But I'm sure if we'd been doing this for longer, like last year, we would have a lot more savings tips for our listeners. But unfortunately, not to be. Now let's talk about property. So the big news that has been making headlines over the past week or so has been the government's announcement that heading into the upcoming election that they're proposing a 2-year ban on foreign property investors. Now, this is one that has been talked about before because it was actually a policy from the opposition that they'd put forward, but now the government is proposing to match it. What do you make of all this?
Yeah, well, it's an interesting one. So, just to sum it up real quick, over the weekend, as you said, the Albanese government announced a pretty big move to address the housing crisis. So, from the 1st of April this year, foreign buyers won't be able to purchase established homes for at least 2 years. Now, if you think that sounds a bit familiar, or if you're thinking, isn't that already the case? You're right, it is the case. Until now, foreign investors have been barred from buying existing property except in limited circumstances, such as when they come to live here for work or study. But this new policy will now mean that those people who are living here temporarily, either for work or study, will also now be barred from doing so. So the government is calling it a temporary ban, but it's in effect for a couple of years until March 2027, at which point the government will review it and to decide, whether or not it should be extended or made permanent. Now, the government is obviously doing this because we've got a housing crisis in full swing, thanks to record levels of migration, rising construction costs, and a sluggish planning system. The government's trying to tackle this issue from all angles. Foreign investment in established homes, it's been a bit of a sticking point for a lot of people. It's a hot political issue. Last year, around 34% of residential purchases were for existing homes. And I guess this policy is just really aiming to sort of keep that pool of properties within the reach of Australian buyers. But of course, not everyone is happy about this ban. Experts sort of say it's more symbolic, really, than anything else, because as I said before, foreign investors were already mostly restricted to buying new properties anyway. And according to property experts, foreign buyers, they only account for quite a small fraction of total home sales, with only about 1,600 transactions a year. The biggest foreign buying comes from migrants who then go on to become Australian citizens and purchase homes. Temporary residents, they already have to sell their homes when they leave, so their purchases are, short term by nature. Now, if you look at ABS data, it confirms that about 1,000 new migrants have arrived in Australia every day under the Albanese government, which I was quite surprised. It's quite a lot. But the number of new houses being approved remains far below that number. So, there's obviously a few things that need to be done. Clearly that level of migration versus the number of new houses being approved isn't sustainable. So I guess this policy is aiming to address that a little bit, but we've got an election coming up soon. So this is definitely a good political play. But whether or not it will really drive much impact remains to be seen.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm of the view, and I must say that I think it is pretty small fry in the grand scheme of things. I think foreign investors are kind of this faceless entity that exists in people's minds, and they are kind of it's easy to demonize, and the government loves an easy sort of scapegoat, I suppose. They scapegoated the RBA throughout its entire tenure, and now they're scapegoating foreign investors. And we've seen that done in Canada and other developed countries as well with similar housing crises, when the root of the issue is supply, and also like easing demand. But although this does sort of, I guess, ease demand, it's a small drop in the ocean. I must say that's just my opinion, of course. But to my next question, it's not just established homes, is it, Em? They're tackling what's called land banking by foreign investors. Now, what on earth is land banking?
That's right. So land banking is where investors buy up blocks of land and they don't do anything on it. They don't develop it. They don't build anything on it. They essentially just wait until it grows in value and then they sell it for a profit. Now, obviously, from an investment standpoint, I can see why you would do that. It's very lucrative. But in terms of the housing crisis and when it comes to housing supply, it's a huge problem because it delays the construction of much needed homes. So to address this, the government is cracking down on this and they're tightening up development conditions. And they're throwing $8.9 million into auditing land banking. So just to make sure that investors are not just sitting on land, basically, and allowing it to grow in value while buyers who want to buy a property and live in it miss out essentially, which I agree with because I do think that we need to sort of crack down on land banking. As I said, from an investment standpoint, totally get it.
Mm.
It's lucrative, but it doesn't do anything to address the housing crisis.
Yeah, you do wonder why they've just restricted it to foreign investors
Mm.
doing land banking because maybe some local investors do it. Maybe it's not so good for like local investors, could be mums or dads, or even like large corporations. Either way, it's somewhat restricting the supply of housing if you're just buying land to do nothing with it. You're not using it to farm or produce any sort of goods or build property. Then what are you doing with it?
Mm.
But just broadly, all up, what would this policy mean for regular investors? Obviously, foreigners will be banned from buying existing, but do you think local investors will be happy about this sort of thing? Maybe less competition when buying property.
Yeah, I mean, it could certainly open up certain parts of the market and create a little bit less competition in certain segments of the market. But, it's definitely not a silver bullet solution at all. And the extent of this on the market remains to be seen. It could create opportunities for local buyers, but the bigger underlying issue here is housing supply. And this is a very minor step in that right direction. It needs a lot more work. Don't forget that the government is aiming to build 1.2 million new homes by the end of this decade, and we're still falling really short of that target. So, yeah, while this crackdown could definitely open up a lot more supply for development, which is great if you're an investor in the market for a new build. So that's something to keep an eye out for definitely. Yeah.
And just finally, before we let you go, this could be your mic drop moment. You might not get to talk about Australian property or nor even care about it in England. So, what's your take on all of this on foreign investments and its subsequent ban? What's your opinion? And don't be afraid to mince words.
Yeah, well, I mean, as I said at the start, we've got an election coming up very soon. So this looks really good from a political standpoint, and it's definitely a vote grabber for a certain portion of the population that are, very against foreign investors. So it's definitely, I think it's a bit of a vote, a ploy to grab votes, I suppose, from those from that demographic of people. Um, But foreign investors were already banned from buying existing property here. So it's just an extension of that, a very minor extension of that, and it's not really gonna do a whole lot. I don't think. It's not a silver bullet solution. I don't think it's going to create a lot of change. I think it's a bit of a twofold solution that we've got here, because, as I said before, with the 1,000 new migrants a day, that's a lot of people, and with supply not matching that, there's got to come a point where we sort of say, we've got to slow one down and let the other one catch up a little bit. Otherwise, it's just not going to get better anytime soon. So I think we need to really ramp up supply coming into the pipeline. That's the bigger issue here. But I do like the crackdown on land banking, though. But I would like to see that extended beyond just foreign investors. It does feel a little bit kind of xenophobic, might I say, to blame everything on foreign investors. I dare say there are a lot of domestic investors as well doing the same thing, and I haven't really heard much about cracking down on that. So we'll see. It should be interesting.
Yeah, some pretty strong words there, Em. But I guess, being your last appearance on this podcast, I wanted to ask probably a bit of a question without notice, but just generally, you obviously have been covering the Australian property market for quite some time now. Just broadly, like, where do you see it heading? Is it heading in the right direction? Are things okay? Is Australia doing enough to address the housing affordability and supply issues that it's been experiencing over the past decade? What are you thinking about that broadly?
I think that we like to make very small band-aid solutions to bigger issues without really addressing the bigger underlying cause. So we like to slap band-aids on, just like this policy here. It's interesting, I suppose, looking at the market overall. I think, as someone who's yet to buy property in Australia, I don't really know when I ever will be able to. Certainly coming back from living overseas, that will be interesting. It'll be interesting to see what the market's like in 5 years' time, 10 years' time. It's definitely not getting better, I don't think. And I think that unless we sort of stop, we need to stop applying these sort of like band-aid slapstick solutions to bigger problems, and really take a much deeper look at the underlying, what's actually going on here. Otherwise, I don't really see it getting better anytime soon, to be honest.
There we go, Emma. And now you're off to a country where the housing crisis, especially in London, is probably even worse. So, thanks for that market update, Em. Of course, if you're interested in more of what Emma has to say, there's a Your Investment Property magazine. It's a bi-monthly magazine. You can enter your email to get it. I think the latest issue's just been released over the past week or so. So enter your email. That's all you have to do, and you'll get a copy to your inbox. So yeah, thanks for that market update, Em. Your last ever.
I know. Thanks, guys.
Thanks so much, Em. Really appreciate your time on all the podcasts over the years, and wish you all the best for your time over in the UK.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.